Oh, hi, Gabrielle. All right, it looks like our board's here. Maybe you can do the roll call when you have a second.
Sure. So those present, Andy Kishitz, I could not hear him. Could you all?
You on mute, Andy?
I see him.
Are you on mute, Andy? Oh, no. How about now? Okay, we can't hear you, but he's present.
Okay. Brad Reed,
Here.
Gerard Ahern,
Present.
Brian Holmes,
Here.
Gabrielle Amano,
Here.
and Elizabeth Hutchins.
Here.
Okay, perfect. So this is the continuation from last week's hearing, which was on June 7th. There was no comment taken at that hearing. The prior official hearing we had was May 16, 2022. So some key items that as we move along in this project are we got the final sort of comment from Design Review Board on 6/6, where they spoke about 3 items that they noted, dealing with windows in the mail building, lighting for the bike room entrances, and request to review signage, acknowledging that that may not come until after the project's permanent, but they'd like to be involved in the signage review. And then today we received the first of a draft decision, so it's certainly more of a boilerplate. It looks like we're starting to get sections populated, but we can maybe go over any new materials that either Valerie or any of our consultants have had for us tonight, and then any new materials from the applicant, and maybe look at that draft decision for the first time and see what key items we need to have so we can incorporate them into that, so we can facilitate, a better reading of it. It just came in late in the day for some of us, so I'm not sure whether the board's had a chance to, absorb it at all, but that's why, we'd like to get as many pieces into it before we, formally vote to close the hearing, so that then we can really work on the draft decision after that. So, why don't we start with Jim, in case you have any updates from the project side?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, good to see you again. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, really, Mr. Chairman, we don't have a lot to update here. We obviously have the draft decision, as you noted. We are moving through the Concom process still as well. There's a peer review, that's been retained and is underway through the Concom process for the ANRAD. So we'll be working through that in the coming weeks. And I think Phil Cordero's on that could speak that out if there's any questions on that. But otherwise, really, we're focused on trying to get to a point where we can get a decision that's agreeable to all sides here and work towards a vote and go from there.
So did you guys send over to Valerie a list of the final waivers? I know that was talked about, and I didn't see anything. And in the draft decision,
Yeah,
there's a reference to it, but no actual attachment. So I was hoping we'd have that.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, with apologies. So that there was some confusion, frankly, on our side, that I think that our engineer had given them to our attorney, and I think there was some confusion on who was submitting them. And unfortunately, Debbie's not available tonight for this hearing.
Right.
She was available for last week's hearing, but when it got moved, she had a conflict. And so we'll submit those hopefully as early as tomorrow, but we don't have them available for tonight.
Okay. So, which is fine. I mean, it just, if we had them tonight, we'd be able to maybe have a little more robust review, but we may have to then, set that up for, we'll get through tonight's hearing. We'll see if we have one more hearing before, so we can have as many pieces, as I said, into that draft before we close, because if there's something we miss, and it's material that we'd have to have discussions on, once we close the public hearing, we wouldn't be able to, deal with those types of items. So I don't want to, leave something up for a chance where it hurts either the town or, or the project in general. So.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and again, without Debbie here, I don't want to speak out of turn, but my understanding is that once the public hearing is closed, we could still have discussions about the decision. It just can't introduce new material, but I could be incorrect on
I
that.
think we can have working discussions on the decision, but if there's things that we would have to bring into that decision that weren't discussed during the public hearing, like, I mean, we haven't had like our town council look at it, is even to say, well, if say there's something in the draft decision that because it's a rental project, we've only had, as far as our board experience, projects that have been basically single family home ownership or condo ownership. There may be items that we need to incorporate there that, that it would be beneficial to know, so that either you or, the people can opine or discuss them. I just hesitate rushing that closure. Like, say we had all that stuff for tonight, maybe it could be a tonight thing to close the public hearing, but until I see rather than a skeleton, somewhat of a full body decision, I'd be hesitant to just say or entertain a motion, because I don't say it myself, to close the public hearing.
Understood.
Okay. So if that's the extent of your update, let me see if I know Joe Pesnola has had a chance to look at the draft decision, and I know he's also splitting time tonight because he's involved in a couple of hearings. So if he had any input.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
If it fits into your time, Joe, if you want to chime in now versus later.
Yeah, I did go through the draft decision. It's a little bit more than boilerplate. It does have some very specific conditions to the project. I just received it yesterday, so I apologize for getting that to you only today. But I think what I tried to add to it was some more specificity with regards to monitoring, and also with regards to the local preference, which the board has expressed interest in the past in having some aspect of local preference. So I think the biggest thing that we've been waiting for and is now in the decision is a memorialization of the mitigation that's been negotiated with the select board. And this is in relation to the waiver request for the specific conditions of the original special permit. It's kind of in consideration of what some of the intent of those conditions were and remain valid, notwithstanding, the Bolton Fair pieces. There are some public access and some issues that were within those conditions of the original special permit that the select board has been trying to capture and embrace and negotiate in good faith with the applicant to do. So I think that's between the board, the select board, and the applicant, and those negotiations are just about complete. There's a couple of issues that are still kind of on the cusp, and I think Valerie and Jim can lend more to that. What your board's role is just understanding that and memorializing that, and then considering those mitigation measures, those pieces in your consideration of the grant of the waiver for those special permit conditions. So I think between Valerie and Jim, you could have a discussion. They could both collectively bring you up to speed on where those negotiations stand, what each of the, I think, 5 items are. And whether you all understand it and think that the way that it's worded is appropriate for your decision.
Yeah, but my understanding is from reading that is, while we can't, as part of the 40B process, we can't sort of require those items, but they're memorializing because they're something that the board, being one of the boards of the town, are negotiating or with the applicant as sort of adjunct to this or peripheral to our 40B application review.
Right, and you'll see that I tried to soften the language and not call and change the wording from condition to a negotiated mitigation.
Right, okay.
Which is common. As I've always said, the town can ask the developer for anything. And if whether or not you can condition it is another question, and it's always up to the developer as to whether or not they assent to those conditions. But this is a LIP, so there is a role of the select board and continued role, and it sounds like they're just about to the finish line.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Okay.
Just one comment. I mean, without a waiver list, I don't see how you can really make an intelligent assessment of things at this time, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, that's a valid point too. I think we certainly do need that document, that final, and it sounds like from what Jim Wood said previously that it's going to be forthcoming. It just it wasn't available for tonight. So I think Joe was speaking to. I may have, because I just saw the first draft and there were a lot of open sections for like town board comments and other things. I may have characterized it as a boilerplate, but Joe, I think, was identifying that there's more information in there than just boilerplate. But for me, it's less complete than I would think we need to get to the point of having a full walkthrough initially, so we could say, yeah, do we feel comfortable closing the public hearing? Valerie, do you want to speak to any updates from boards that that we've had any input since the last hearing, other than design review board? We had the 6-6 letter that I just spoke about, where they had 3 items that they want the applicant to consider. I trust the applicant may have got that document, but I don't know for sure.
I don't know that I have provided that letter to the applicant. Jim, have you seen the final letter from the DRB?
I have not,
Okay.
Valerie, but I did, our consultants who were attending, at that meeting have reported back. So I think that sounds like it aligns. I'm not sure I'm 100% certain on what the lighting requirement is, but certainly on the windows and the signage, I'm aware of what those are.
I think, Jim, if I recall from that, they just wanted to be sure that there's some exterior lighting at the front of the doors where the bike.
Right, exactly. At each of the bike room entrances at the garages, just to consider it. Again, the design review board can't require things, but just to think about that. The last meeting with the design review board went very well. I think they were very pleased by the changes that were made to the architectural features of the buildings and also the landscape plan. So the letter, it only has, I think, 3 points on it that are really just to consider as the applicant moves forward. And then also just a note on if there are any sign details that might come forward, they would like to have review of that, though I know that, it is in Bolton, it is the select board that has purview over sign permits, but they could ask for the design review board to provide comment if that happens in the future. So the DRB was really the only board that I received extra comments from since our last public hearing, and they seem satisfied with the way the plans look now and don't need any further review.
Okay, perfect. And are we all set with the any of the issues like easement with that special permit, or that the way they're going to break up the property?
So with that, so the planning board did approve the A&R to divide the properties, but there still is that issue of needing to modify the special permit. So that has not yet come before the planning board.
Okay. And we just have to incorporate that process in the decision or in our record?
No, so I think that the way that Joe and the applicant and our council has talked about this is more, it seems more appropriate for the planning board to be the body that would amend that existing special permit in the future.
Right. And we just have to make reference in our decision.
Oh, I see.
That's
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Let's see. So from Bushley and Witten, I see Amy Ballwan. Are there any items open, Amy, that you or any observations you want to make on any of the wetlands issues?
So from the start with the stormwater, I believe we covered all of that last time. There was a couple of deferrals to the ZBA and maybe a suggested condition. As for the wetlands, as we discussed at the very beginning of this meeting, the applicant is still going through an ANRAD process with conservation. If I understand this correctly from our discussion last time around, if there are any changes to the wetlands boundaries, that would take them, that would change the status under the local wetlands bylaw. They do need to incorporate that in their waiver request, or tie that to the waiver request. Otherwise, if something else changes down the line, or if it becomes jurisdictional under some other entity, such as the Mass DP or Army Corps or something along those lines, then that would be a later discussion, I suppose. It would be returned to ZBA.
So you, I assume you'll need to see that final list of waivers as well.
Yes, that would be good.
So you as well as Janet, so that if there's anything to stormwater or the wetlands, that if we have to be advised of any potential petition, you'll be able to opine on those.
Yes.
Okay. Val, do you want to bring up the draft decision? We can just sort of walk quickly through the sections. I don't know if people, the board has had a chance to read it, but if there's anything we can see that is omitted or we may need to add. I saw there were placeholders for certain board comments, but I don't know if all of them were covered or whether that was intended in this draft was just to give a flavor for what were some of the open sections.
Right. Yes, I still have yet to fill that part out, but I can go ahead and share the screen and kind of walk through what we have.
And we don't have to do a full read. I just want, for an overview so you can give a, the outline. So we got our procedural history, Pretty factual.
Yeah.
Yep. And findings, so the initial findings that it's a valid 40B application, the applicant has control of the site and things like that. Statutory minimums that we need affordable housing in the town, we're only at 3.99. It looks like we need to meet the 10%. So this project being affordable and a LIP is, will help us meet our local needs, and so that's good.
Just goes on to describe the site itself, the affordable component.
Yeah. So in here, like, so 11 through 15 are certain boards. Will be section for like design review board and the others, planning board, or any, or you're just envisioning these will be the major ones we need to put comments in on?
Yes, I can add in the final design review board comments there as well. Basically just taking a summary from, I think, my last staff report, just to memorialize kind of what the general comments were there.
Right.
And then, of course, we will have the waivers. I know that some boards, so this is one way to do it, just as voting on the waivers as in some. You can also, of course, vote on each one. We can kind of lay out what the request is and what the exact zoning relief would look like and what a vote would be on each one.
Right.
So we can get there once we have that.
Right. So we've in the past, so we've done it depending on the complexity of the 40B, we've done it either individual line items or we did it by section. So for example, you have the sort of the affordable housing ones, like, or the so zoning, we needed the multi-family on one lot, things like that, so 3 or 4 of those were all related to zoning. We reviewed them all, then voted on them as a section. And then if we have wetlands or stormwater, we can do that if it makes sense. Or we did have one where I think there were 40 and we did 40 separate votes, so
right.
That's a lot. I mean, do it that way. So if it makes sense and we can, expedite it to the extent that they all make sense to approve in one motion by section, we can do that too.
Yeah.
We'll certainly open that up to the board decision on what's their preference, so.
Yeah, I just have a comment. Until I see these, obviously, I'm not going to make any decisions, but
Oh, no, right.
we may have a preliminary process where we can look at a bunch of them as we're in agreement, and then there may be some that we have some controversial responses to. So I think maybe we can limit the process so we don't have to vote on every one. We can do a group, but maybe we can pull out the ones that are troubling, if there are any, and go over them separately.
Yeah, right. Yep, makes sense. So I say, well, once we get that final list and can incorporate it, even if it's looking at attachment 1 or whatever it'll be referenced as, it doesn't have to be like a line item in the bulk of the border, the base of the decision, but that's fine, So then you have the decision date, and you have the conditions.
Some of these are, as Gerard was saying before, some of them are more boilerplate. Some of them are related to, comments within peer review documents or through discussion with this board.
Yeah, because that's always one of the important is when we get to that sort of more broadly completed draft decision, then we can be sure that our, as the peer reviewers look at it, that they can say, "Yep, yes, we recommended a decision or a condition, and yeah, it's in there," so that we don't miss something, because there's a lot of documentation that we have to go back and sort of re-review to be sure we catch everything, so.
Like, yeah.
No construction, third party inspections. So this one, Valerie or Joe, so
Yeah, this one's a little different than typical because
the number of units or because of the size of the project?
both, right, exactly. So I know that when another comprehensive permit in town was constructed, the Pondside Estates, I think it's called, or Pondside. They also needed assistance with building department inspections because it does take up a more considerable amount of time. So
yeah, because that, again, the number of units was so much greater than I mean, that was, I think, the largest, almost 40B at that time, so.
Mr. Chairman, just a point, in the draft, there was, I think it was from Attorney Horowitz, had tried to cap some of the fees, some of the monitoring fees or the inspection fees.
All right, yeah.
And I don't suggest you do that. I think you can have an initial deposit of a set amount, say $10,000 into a 53G account. Under the 53G and administering those type of services paid for by the applicant, there needs to be a full accounting of all of that, and at each step there'll be a proposal that'll be presented to the applicant. The applicant will be able to challenge it if they believe it's too much. But on a project of this size and importance to the community, I don't think anyone needs to try to speculate on how much those services might cost. We can give bulk and just a continual rolling accounting of that. We're not looking for people to be clerk of the works and be on the site for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I think the board will be fair with regards to that. So, but I don't think there's cap those fees.
I think that's very reasonable because, I mean, to the extent we had a separate, apartment unit type of project in the recent past, because even if it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, costs are so much more and whatnot. So, all right, we all understand the nature of 40B, and we don't want to make it overly burdensome to the applicant, so that we're bringing in the affordable units. But yeah, I think this is a good way of doing it. And yeah, whatever that initial deposit, if that 10,000 isn't the right number and they suggest a different number, but at some point, yeah, we'd have to work on a method to allow for replenishment as valid costs are identified to do the inspections and to make it happen.
And with regard to the building department help, the building department assistance is going to only help the developer, because they're going to get inspection more timely manner. They're going to move the process, that move the construction along faster. If they have to, 4 days for an inspection, that's cost money. So certainly there's a benefit.
No, well taken, Joe. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sure, Jim.
If I may, just, I know we're not necessarily going through all these points, but if we could back up really quickly to number 11, I just want to point out there was an error in this that when folks are reading this offline. So sentence 2 is supposed to read, exterior construction activities shall not occur on Sundays or federal holidays. There's a direct contradiction between sentence 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah, right. Monday to Saturday, then, right. So,
Yeah, both can't be true. So I just wanted to point that out.
oh, good. Yeah, so things like that, certainly those I'm sure get kicked through in final reads and things like that, but thanks for pointing that out. Yep.
Yep, thank you.
So then we go into pre-construction meetings. So all this is just to be sure that everyone's on board with what's going to happen once construction commences. Staging, street sweeping. So on that, things like for street sweeping, construction, does the DPW have to weigh in on any of that construction process, Valerie? As far as anything that's going to be impacting the streets or the police, that have to be notified? How does that work?
So typically what I do is in this pre-construction meeting, that's when you have, where is that? Number 13.
13, yeah.
Yeah, that's when I would bring out onto site various people. So I bring out the DPW director, public safety, someone from building, and make sure that we're all kind of on board with how things are expected to go. So I don't typically have other departments like the DPW weigh in on specific conditions, but of course, we might want to review my notes just to make sure there's nothing else from that standpoint in terms of the findings, and then have a condition related to it. But yeah, typically it's discussed at that pre-construction meeting.
And the applicants at that meeting as well, or someone from the applicants team?
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, you take photos of the condition of the road, where it meets 117, just make sure that we are all understanding, what the final conditions expected to look like.
Right, so as is, and then if there's any repair that needs to be done, it's clear what it looked like to put it back to, okay. Staging areas.
So condition 22 is starting where we're noting, trying to memorialize some of the negotiated
Select board.
points.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So it looked like, as Joe was highlighting in these comments, like some of them, rather than do any type certain work, they may, as it looks like, contribute some funds toward a lot for getting that work done, and the town would then do the work, or however, have someone else do the work, but at least have commitments to help to that end.
Right, exactly. So it's just important to get in kind of the timing and the responsible party at this point. Yeah.
So some of them say they're still under discussion. Is the amount under discussion, or the process under discussion, on both?
I would say for these ones, it's for D,
E and F.
And F, it's the amount. But this is reflecting what the applicant has generously offered so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we know they're deep pockets, right?
So those figures come from the applicant, not us.
Well, it'll be mine. It will be whatever they negotiate with the select board. So, yeah, we can't.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah. So there's been figures put out there by both sides, and these are sort of the latest, but as Valerie accurately pointed out, D and F are, and as noted in the document, are still being discussed. We, A and B, and C are, are in our minds anyway, completed or agreed to, if you will, as well as E, and then D and F are, under discussion on those amounts. So there's been proposal, counter proposal, and, without going too far into the details, we're working through that.
So that's fine. Appreciate it. And I do appreciate, you and your team, working with the select board on this, because, it's goodwill. In my perspective, it's goodwill for the town to know that we have a good partner, as far as, the developer came in and just didn't take advantage of the town, that they worked with the town in many ways, like whether it be the design review, all the hurdles that you work through on projects.
Yeah, of course, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. We feel like that's the best and only way to work. And we, some of these we have been talking about since day one and have committed to, and, we're certainly here to stand behind those commitments.
Thanks.
Do we think we could address the wording of A here? It says used for vehicular use to use as a crossing. I don't really, it's just a weird way to say what it's saying. And I don't, and I don't know if this is coming directly from what you guys are negotiating with the select board either, but it's just like a weird way of saying what's trying to be said. So maybe we can kind of fix that language.
Yeah, we can get into some editing, late at some point, certainly, but the substantive portion of it is, I think is accurate.
Right. Yeah, they're gonna do some work to replace something so that we have better crossing, but yeah, so they can always work on the language. The purpose of tonight is, yes, we see anything that jumps out that needs to be addressed, certainly I identify, but we're trying to just get a walkthrough of the outline of this decision, so. All right, so post constructions, as built. So Valerie, this version that we have in front of us, has this version been in front of the applicant as well, or is this? I know we had different. I saw an earlier version that didn't include this, then we saw this version.
Chairman, I did send it to Attorney Horwitz. I did not copy Mr. Lambert directly.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
I should have copied you, Jim.
No worries at all. Attorney Horwitz forwarded it on to me. I have it in front of me. We haven't had a chance to. We've had a chance to read it, but we'll have probably some comments on Mr. Piznola's comments, but which obviously aren't reflected here.
Right.
But yes, we do have it. Thank you.
Valerie, do you mind scrolling back up for just a second to the post-construction meeting?
Sure.
Okay, so prior to the issuance of the final certificate of occupancy, is the anticipation that there will be sort of like interim COs? Like, will you be having some people living in there while you are like once one building is done, do you anticipate opening that up before the rest of the buildings are done? What is sort of that timeline? Or are you waiting till everything's complete before people will move in?
Sure. Yeah, through the chair. So, yeah, absolutely. The intention here would get what we call a phased occupancy. Too early to tell if that will be, one building at a time or two buildings, but there'll be multiple phases, and we'll go through that in great detail with the building department prior to even application for a building permit.
Okay.
We'll deliver a plan for phasing, show not only which buildings would get released when, but how we would adjust construction, fencing, and traffic flow and things like that accordingly to keep them separate. We do it on all of our projects. They're all different in how they lay out, obviously. So they're unique plans, but yeah, that is our intention.
Okay.
And that'll be closely coordinated with the building department along the way.
Okay.
No, that's actually a great point, and we can craft a condition that addresses the timing on the receipt of that phasing plan and the inclusion of the fire department to make sure that life safety is up to where they needed to be for each of the released buildings.
Mhm. Yeah.
So definitely something that needs almost a whole section.
Right, okay, good. Because yeah, you would think, any type of phase in, you have to, as you say, err on the side of safety and caution that people be now on and about a site that's still having active construction on other parts.
Right. So you
Yeah.
need a way to segregate the public from the construction.
Right. Mhm.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, these conditions are certainly not meant at this point to cover everything. So there's
Mhm.
still some blank spots.
Oh, no, certainly acknowledging that, Valerie, and no negative, attribution that they're not, it's not there yet, you know what I mean? You've done a great job getting it to this point with your collaboration, so appreciate it.
This one's a little bit more about maintenance of common spaces and the road itself. And then this one is the local preference that Joe was mentioning earlier.
Mhm.
So I don't know if the board does want to discuss that now. If you do have thoughts on whether or not there should be a local preference component to this project.
So what would be the detriment to not have it, Valerie? I mean, wouldn't it always be helpful to have a preference that if we have anyone that qualifies within Bolton, that they have some availability or jump to the top of the line to get in there?
Yeah, I think it depends on how you look at it. It certainly is seemingly, like neighborly and friendly to allow people who already live in Bolton a chance to remain. I know that there are, there's another side of the coin there, and there are other housing advocates who say that it's actually important to increase diversity of the town by not providing a local preference at first. But again, it's something that only does impact the first lottery. So it's not necessarily impacting subsequent lotteries when those the 58 units are need to be released to another individual. So it's really just kind of the first blush, how many folks are going to be, might have a few more points in order to get through the lottery.
Yeah, but I would think, given my perspective, given the size of the housing project and the number of affordable units, that even if it's 10% initially, if there's people that from town perspective that want to qualify, they still have to qualify, but I think it will still open up a reasonable number. I don't know what that number is, but to bring in, you say, other people from other communities that, whether it be diversity or equity, inclusion, all those type of things will come in based on, I think we'll have a benefit on this project because of the size and the number of potential affordables.
I have a quick question. Does local preference, if there were such a thing, apply only to the affordable units? I assume that's what the deal is.
Yes, it's only for the affordable housing lottery.
All right. No, I would certainly like to have some component of local preference. I mean, that's, obviously you can't make it absolute, but I think there should be some accommodation to people who work here and live here.
I would agree with that as well.
Yeah. So just hearing initial inputs, I think it's valid to keep it in there and have it in there. So
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, on the local preference. There's a role that the town has to play there in defending the need for a local preference. So I believe I included language that the developer will cooperate in assisting the town with that justification.
right, I did see that in there at some point.
Yeah, we don't want to create work for Valerie and so I think the developers are used to doing that. They're going to have a monitoring agent that's putting together the outreach and the lottery. As part of that, they're trying to understand the local needs, and they're usually best suited to then assist the town in justifying to DHCD the need for the local preference.
Yeah, and that evidence can be fairly easily taken from the 2021 housing production plan that was approved. So that aspect of it that will come back to the town shouldn't be a heavy lift. So.
Okay. The recording of decision, subsidizing agents, document approvals. Maps. And then we'll get the waiver section.
When I scanned through this very quickly, not that long ago, I noticed that the town of Wayland is listed here in a couple places.
Yeah,
So I just want to make sure we change that to.
Yeah, it's just copied from other decisions. It's,
I assumed as much, but I just want to make sure we don't miss it.
Yeah.
No, I saw that too, and I was like, there's one right there.
That's my bad, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, up above in J too. So we just do a search on way, we put town of Bolton, but
yeah. All right, that's basically the end of it.
Right, and then we say we'll have attachments with the listing of documents. They'll have, the actual waivers that we'll look at. So, Joe, regarding the fact that it's a rental property, and we've only dealt with, home ownership for sale, single units or condos. Is there other, either regulatory language or whatever, or is that what, when we put this out to our town council to review as well, they'll give us that feedback?
Yeah, I definitely think town council will have to get some feedback on this, and in particulars with regards to that. And basically the difference between, there's an obvious difference between home ownership and rental, but the big thing is, the biggest thing is this, the affordability component in the project is going to be here for a very long time from the standpoint of ongoing monitoring. What happens when a resident has an income that increases beyond the limit? Well, that person then is invited to stay, but has to start to pay market. Then an affordable unit comes off the rolls. They have to then next time they have to
Make one available.
that an apartment comes available. They need affordables. There's just a lot of complexities that we need to make sure that go into this, and it's all governed by the regulatory agreement. And because this is a LIP, normally the regulatory agreement is between the subsidizing agency and the applicant. In the case of the LIP, the regulatory agreement is signed by three parties: the select board, the developer, and the subsidizing agency. So there's more at stake. There's more involvement. There's just, again, more complexities, and we want to make sure that we've covered everything. So I would have town council run through it, and I'm sure they're gonna want to add things.
Yep, no doubt.
But I don't think any of that is going to be a surprise to the developer. It's fairly standard. They know the game. They've been through this before. They've seen, that's what they do. They do rental housing, and they've seen decisions that are longer and have more to them.
Right. Okay. So So certainly to that point, and I've made reference, but we've asked Valerie to be sure that we schedule time with, I believe it would be with American and Merrick O'Connell, right, Valerie? Are they still?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
To do a review and incorporate, their comments, and then get that, whatever the next version of the document, when that includes, be sure it gets in front of the parties here and the applicant, so we can just keep this process going, so that, they say, once we end, if we can get those draft if we get the waivers in there, then I think the next time we meet, I think we do need one more meeting to have those where we can review them and then entertain what's the scope as far as whether the board's opinion to close the public hearing at that point. And then we have the 40 days to really kick the tires on the decision and wrap that up. So did I see a question? Andy, did you have a question?
Yeah, the question was about the designation of affordable units. We're used to doing these single family homes where the designations are made up front.
Right.
So in this sort of rental project, at what point do the affordable units get actually designated? Would that be prior to a decision, or would it be post decision, and then we just determine whether it's material or immaterial, the designations themselves?
I'll note that the applicant has included in the plans kind of how those affordable units will be dispersed throughout the buildings and throughout the size of the apartments themselves. Whether it's
That's a
one bedroom.
disbursement, but it's not an actual designation of which unit will be affordable and which will not be. So, maybe we don't do that in these type of projects. I was hoping Joe could chime in on that if he's available.
Andy, I can comment. I mean, until Joe is ready to answer. So, yeah, typically I think the question is about specific units. That generally, in our experience, gets negotiated and documented in the regulatory agreement with DHCD. We go through great pains in that negotiation on, not putting units next to each other or stacked on top of each other. And there's all sorts of guidelines and rules and regulations that guide where those units can and can't go. And that's the process that we've always seen it play out, not generally speaking during the decision process.
Okay, I'm not doubting you, and I just, it's not our normal project that we see in the Zoning Board of Appeals. We're usually doing single family affordable units, and those we have to approve those up front, the designations themselves.
Understood.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it always comes into it, because then we can sort of be sure, because we have certain models and we have certain, defined spots for the homes, and we can make sure that they're all going to look the same and not have them all bunched in one corner, so it makes sense. And the layouts are, less fungible than like apartment units, so it's an easier determination to work with our developers on the for sale.
So would the final designations come back to us so we could say whether they're material or immaterial, or is that not necessary? Again, if Joe's available, that would be great.
The board does review that regulatory agreement. So, in a manner, I guess, yes. Joe, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that.
I have one quick question as well.
There's actually no formal requirement to designate the areas ahead of time. The affordable units. There is, they've provided a disbursement and across the locations of the units, the building per building, and the units types, which is appropriate. But as I said before, you could have a person in the future start to make more money and no longer be an affordable unit. So in a rental project, the affordable units may even change locations.
Right.
So it's definitely, if they give us a final list before they start construction or whenever, obviously when they go to outreach and they go to lottery, they need to have that at that point have them designated, because when they award them to a qualifying family or individual, they have to have the unit.
One question,
that-
question, Joe. Sorry. Is the applicant required to keep the same number of affordable units in the project, even though they're moving around? I know it's.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
So they can't be a reduction in the number of affordable
There
units.
cannot. There can be a time at which they drop by one, but the next time a unit vacates, they need to make that next unit affordable. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So any other question? We got a question up or hand up. Is that you, Andy? Or is that 3146?
It looks
Mark
like
Sec?
Mark Sec. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Mark Sec with Wood Partners, I could just add a little more color. So part of even ahead of the regulatory agreement with the state is we'll have to get what's called an affirmative fair housing marketing plan approved by the state. And that's when the state will ask for your proposed designations of where the units, to make sure, as Jim mentioned, that you're not, putting them all in the corner of a building and or all, stacked or right next to each other. So that'll get done actually ahead of the regulatory agreement as part of this affirmative fair housing marketing plan approval that the state will do.
Does that get incorporated into the regulatory plan?
It's a precursor to it.
Okay. Mhm. Thank you. Let's see.
If that just adds some color.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah. So I guess the good news of all this discussion is that it's certainly not. It's an area that won't be omitted. It will get definite scrutiny to ensure that the affordables are, done properly. So that should allay any concerns Andy has or any other board members. I think that's it's good. And looks like we have a hand up from a resident. Do you want to allow that in, Valerie? Do you have to do anything?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Anthony, you want to state your name and address and ask a question or comment?
Tony Jagodnik, East End Road. I submitted in writing a number of questions regarding heating, ventilation, and air conditioning back in November that were actually, those questions are they're all in the packets that were handed out. And I haven't attended all of the meetings in between. By the way, I really appreciate all the great effort that's been put into this plan. It looks like you've been very thorough.
Thanks.
But one of the answers that I got back then from Jim Lambert was that many of the suggestions and questions that I submitted aren't appropriate for a ZBA hearing, and but they would be later. So my question is, are we there yet? When do we take into account things like building codes, like building to the stretch code that's, by the way, going to be changing and becoming even more tight? Is that something that there should be some words in the agreement that we just skimmed through about, or is that something that will happen later?
I don't have an answer for that. Whether either Jim or Joe have any input on that would be helpful.
I can
Valerie?
Yeah, I can just add, so the decision does include a condition on the state codes that the developer would have to meet, and certainly that includes building codes. So
Right.
at whatever time the developer goes to pull those building permits, they would be under the state code at that time. I know that they are looking to to change the stretch code at some point soon. Soon for doer might mean in the next year or two.
Right.
But that still may impact this project. But you are correct that there aren't other ways currently that the decision is calling out green energy. I don't know that that's been something discussed at these public hearings. So I kind of defer to the board and their commentary on that.
For example, I saw an early set of plans that didn't have any solar panels, and then there was one that had solar panels only in one building. And looking at the latest plans now, I don't see any again. So where are we on solar?
The applicant is including, I believe, Jim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it is including rooftop solar on the two largest U-shaped buildings on the property.
That's correct, Valerie.
Okay. So why would you not put solar panels on all the buildings or all the ones of residents? And then how would the people in those U-shaped buildings would have the advantage of a lower electric bill compared with people in other buildings, or how would that work? Yeah, how does the energy from those panels get shared among all the occupants, not just the ones in the two buildings that have the panels?
Yeah, Mr. Jalodnik. So we need to hire through the design process a consultant. For example, in our Wayland project, we hired a solar consultant as we designed the building that did an analysis on what we could fit, how many panels would go up there, the process, right? So
yeah,
that happens as just to back up sort of in general, right, to answer your first question and to add on to what Valerie said, we get to a development approval level, which is this decision on a comprehensive permit.
Right.
And then from there, we embark on the actual detailed design process with the architects and engineers to work towards a building permit. And when we apply for the building permit, that's when we have a fully designed set of plans that will, obviously adhere to the building code that is applicable at that time, as Valerie said. And, we'll have hired our MEP consultants, our solar consultants, if applicable, and analyzed and included in the design process for application to the building department, all of those things. If that.
In my other work, I ran across a company in Massachusetts who specializes in solar for 40B projects. I'd be happy to share that with you, and you could look into that as a possible candidate for who you hire.
Yeah, happy to take a look if you'd like to send it along. There are obviously several consultants out there. We're in the early stages of using solar technology, so we've only been through it a relatively few amount of times compared to how many times we've built these types of projects. So always open to learning on who the better consultants are out there, for sure.
Okay.
And you are still planning to use air source heat pumps for heating and cooling, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. So do we have any other comments or questions? No. So Valerie, when you, do I see someone in the chat? Is there someone? Oh, that was Andy's. Okay, Andy's question. Okay. Valerie, I know you queried the board at some point for an availability for a second meeting. Did you get a consensus on a date?
Let me just double check. I feel like I've been asking you all about a few different dates for meetings. We have,
Almost every day, every week.
I know, we have a few other variances coming up. I think we were looking at, I mean, it sounds rough, but you know, we could tack it on. I mean, the soonest we could do is next Tuesday.
Is that when we're already doing,
We already have other public hearings that night, so it's you know, probably not.
probably not, because I think that one, we also have our another 40B that night too, right? Was that?
No, that one is not again until July 11th or 12th.
Oh, okay, that's Madeline. We get that pushed out to July, but yeah.
Yes, so this one next week is, we have, we're looking at the decision for 711 to 713 Main Street and 113 Still River Road. So those are just decision reviews. We, you know, we could tack it on.
Well, I would, assuming we would have all those other pieces and have town council review by then. I don't know, what would be the next available date?
So then it gets pretty tricky. After next week, it gets harder. I am on vacation the week of the 27th, and I believe we have a few board members who are also on vacation the week of the 4th. So then we're looking at the week of July 11th.
So what is the current extension date that we had for this project? Or what's our current end date?
Jim, remind me if you know that off the top of your head.
Yeah,
can look it
I
up from my
believe
files right now.
it's. I want to say it's July 6th, Valerie.
Yeah, that's what that sounds.
Plus or minus a day there, but it's
7/6 is the current.
I think we were the 7th of June, so it's either July 6th or July 7th.
Right. Okay.
Yes, it's July 6th. Yep.
July 6th. July 6th. So you don't see any date before July 6th currently, or?
I don't think that's going to work. I unfortunately I have meetings. So Monday is the holiday. I have meetings Monday to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay. So what's that one when we have the decision for the 711, 7 to 713, and then what's the other one?
And then the decision for 113 Still River Road. So you're right. We could try to tack it on, but I don't know that we'll
Be effective, or we'll have enough.
I don't know that we'll get town council to be able to review. So the town administrator is out this week, so I haven't been able to get approval to use town council yet.
Right.
So
So what, looking at your count, what would be the most optimal date you think we can accommodate? And then we would just have to ask the applicant to, you know, it looks like it's another week, just one more week to push it out, and then we could have that final review.
So it looks like the week of the 11th, we're meeting on the 11th for Mallard Lane. We're meeting Tuesday the 12th for another variance. We could we could add it on to the end of the variance application on Tuesday, July 12th.
Yeah, I mean, because the variance applicant, usually those aren't, you know, say, depending on what it is, you know, the half an hour usually to 40 minutes at the most. So I think we could probably do that if the applicant was amenable to allowing us to that date. Then the goal of that would be to have the final, well, not the final, but we'd have the most up-to-date document, hopefully inclusive of town council, preliminary review, any of the waivers finally in there. And we walk through that, and we entertain a motion to close the public hearing at that time. And then, you know, we've got our stake in the sand. Does that work, Jim?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were ready to hear from me yet.
Always ready.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. So you know, when we had connected last week and moved the meeting, we were truthfully hoping that we would meet again. I think the date of the 21st that Valerie had put out there, we were hoping we would hit that date for a follow-up. I guess I'm certainly amenable to, you know, if that's just not possible for the board, to extending out another week and accommodating your schedule, certainly. My question regarding that is there, and this is, I truly don't know the answer, and without Debbie here, and maybe for Joe, you know, can the board and Joe, can there be discussions with us and the board and Joe between now and then to work out, you know, to make sure that this is in a further advanced state for that meeting so that it's in as good a shape as it can be in that evening?
Yeah, definitely. Valerie, myself, and Debbie can work together to get this in good shape. And the other piece is getting town council on board to get their input. So I think if the four of us could get together, and that would be the goal, is to have this done as quickly as possible so that we can distribute it to the board so that they can spend their 4th of July reading a 30-page draft decision.
So, Mr. Chairman, yeah, if the intent is that we'll advance it between now and then, and at least the working plan would hopefully be to close the hearing that night, then yeah, we're amenable to extending to accommodate that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's my intention. I mean, the intention of the board. We're not, you know, the longer it goes on, you know, we get more applications in front of us, you know, it just, and we're trying to do the right thing for the project too, you know, so we're not trying to delay you, you know, onerously. It's just, you know.
I completely understand you can't guarantee that. Just.
But that's our, that's where, that's like if we had a playbook, that's what's in the playbook too.
Then we're on board. Yep, we're on board.
Okay. Thanks. All right, so what time? So that would be July 12th.
What time is that first hearing at, Valerie?
The first one is at 6. We actually have a second one at 6:30. Again, it's not just another variance. So I think we can say 6:45.
Well,
Or
why don't we
7.
be safe and just say 7?
Yeah.
Oh, so there was actually 2 on the 12th as well.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's okay. I mean, yeah, so we'll do,
I don't even have that in my calendar.
what's that?
I didn't have 12th in my calendar at all.
Yes,
I didn't.
I haven't even posted the public hearings for those yet, but that's the one I was emailing about last week. So it's a lot of busy night on July 12th.
Right. So Andy, to your point, are you available on the 12th?
I can do that, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I got the impression Jim was trying to push for next week on the 21st. Still.
I think he was, but I think it's clear that with different projects that we're in, things we're doing in people's schedules, that can't work. And we can't necessarily have town council's input by then, because we have a process that Valley has to get approval to, even though we use them on all our 40Bs, we still have to get approval from town administrator to allow us to go out and use their services. So so just procedurally, it's not going to work out to have a week from today. Otherwise, we'd be in the same position. We probably have a somewhat more fuller draft that we'd have holes that we just couldn't probably, you know, comfortably say, let's close the hearing. So
do we need a motion to extend until July 12th at 7 p.m.?
yes, that'd be perfect.
So motioned.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded.
All right, perfect. So
And yes, those in favor, Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Brad Reed,
Yes.
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
yes,
and Gabriella Mano.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so we'll continue this till July 12th at 7 PM. And we have some good marching orders to get this thing in shape for a wrap up. So until then, everyone have a good holiday weekend when it actually hits. And we'll be sure
And
to
then-
be reading a draft decision on July 4th.
And Jim will formally submit an extension?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, we'll take care of that with Valerie. We can do that tomorrow.
Thank you. All right, well, everyone be safe until then.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.
Thank
Go
you.
Celtics.
Yeah.
Go
Good
Celtics.
night.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks,
You're
Amy.
So Valerie, we don't have any minutes or anything, if I recall, so that we can just do a motion to adjourn. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
I motion we adjourn.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Second,
And those in favor, Brad Reed,
yes.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes?
Elizabeth Hutchins,
Yes.
and Gabriella Mono.
Yes.
Perfect. 8:17, not bad. All right, thanks, folks.
Thank
Thanks,
you all.
everybody.
Have a good
Appreciate
night.
it.
Good night.
Appreciate your assistance.